All right, welcome back, everybody. I hope you have all had a great day of information sharing, learning, and I hope you had a chance to make some new connections, because I know that's going to help us meet our common goal, and that goal is building one transportation system. So it's my honor and privilege to introduce our next speaker. Our next speaker is no stranger to North Dakota and its people. He was born and raised in Dickinson and has spent his career advocating for the industry and people that drive our state forward. He has served in the North Dakota State Senate, where he has helped lead efforts to invest in infrastructure and improve public policy. He then took North Dakota's interest to Washington, D.C., and continued representing North Dakota as our congressman in the U.S. House of Representatives, where he had championed issues that are critical to our state's success. We are grateful for his leadership and his commitment to strengthen North Dakota's transportation system. Please join me in giving a warm welcome to our next speaker, the 34th Governor of the great state of North Dakota, Governor Kelly Armstrong.
It's like a really good Lutheran church. Nobody sits in the front row. Thank you all, and thank you for having me here, and I really appreciate the chance to talk to the Upper Great Plains Transportation Institute and for hosting this event with the North Dakota Department of Transportation. This is my first time as governor at the North Dakota Transportation Conference, but it's not my first time going through the process of working on infrastructure. One of the things I'm most proud of in my service to the state of North Dakota is the actual surge bill, which we wrote during, I grew up in Dickinson, I grew up politically in the oil boom, and as we were going through the process of rapid growth and rapid infrastructure and the needs that were needed, not just in western North Dakota, across the whole state of North Dakota, a very good friend of mine who happened to be my freshman football coach started putting a group of people together during the interim before the legislative session, and we were working on putting together this infrastructure package. That man was Rich Wardner, and when we got this whole thing together and doing it, and we were asking for a bunch of money from the legislature, and we were asking for it in a way in which we could get it passed out early enough that we could hit the construction season after the 2015 session. And so they did all the hard work, but when it came to selling it, they're like, why don't we have the trial lawyer go sell this to everybody else? So I had the privilege of sponsoring that bill, which isn't really why I'm telling you this story. The reason I'm telling you this story is when you have a family full of young kids and you drive a lot in North Dakota, there's two special and unique things that happened in my car relating to the surge infrastructure bill. And the first one is shortly after the legislative session, we were driving somewhere with both my kids in the car, and my daughter, who was pretty young at the time, made a comment about how she really hated road construction. And when you practice law all over the state of North Dakota and you're trying to get from point A to point B, which is what you all do really, really well, running into road construction can obviously be a problem. When you are a state senator who worked as hard as you could to get the money out, road construction is no longer a hindrance, it's a really good thing. So I turned around to my daughter, who was in the car seat in the back of the car, and I said, we don't ever say we hate road construction in this car. And that was fun. But that wasn't even the best story. So my parents have a lake cabin up at Pick City, and we live in Dickinson. And there's a lot of different fun ways you can drive home. They're all, by the way, almost exactly the same amount of time. You are always trying to find the closest way from Dickinson to Pick City, North Dakota, and it doesn't matter which. You can go to Beulah and up, you can go to New Salem and up, you can take 1803 across. It doesn't matter. They're all the same way. But being a trial lawyer, being in the legislature, being the state party chairman of the Republican Party, and having a wife with a full-time job and basically being a single parent at least 60% of the time, because I'm gone all the time, you'll forgive my wife if the one point in time when you have two young kids at home, she has what I like to refer to as travel-induced narcolepsy. It is the place where when she is in the passenger seat of the car, it is the one place where she doesn't have work calling, me nagging on her for something, or the kids calling for something, so she figures out how to take a nap. My wife is from Oslo, Norway. And so we're driving home from the lake, and we decide to come through Kildare on the way home. I decided, she was already asleep. And we're almost into Dickinson, and she wakes up, and she's like, I had this very weird dream that we were driving through western North Dakota, and we went through a roundabout. And I'm like, that wasn't a dream. There's now a roundabout in Kildare. And she's like, she did, because it was, I mean, we forget about all of these things. That wasn't that long ago. We did all of these projects and all of this stuff, and it was just really interesting to experience, not only from a policy level, but from how big of a difference that it made for communities and how much difference it made for the state of North Dakota to be able to invest in those things that we often take for granted. But when we have the growth and we have all of the different challenges that are faced with that rapid growth, and being able to effectuate those and actually provide to the North Dakota citizens, it was something I was really proud to be a part of. And it was also very interesting to put a roundabout in Kildare. But I have the deepest respect for the job you all do every day. Without you, our world would literally come to a standstill. No interstate commerce, no education, no tourism, no agriculture, no energy production. I could go on and on. Everything we do depends on transportation systems. And if you all are the brains and the bronze behind our excellent transportation system in the United States, and especially here in North Dakota, where our infrastructure actually ranks #1 in the nation. Let me ask right now, if you worked on the planning, engineering, construction, or maintenance of transportation infrastructure in the past year, I'd tell you to stand, but just raise your hands. We should give these folks a round of applause for keeping our state and our nation moving. We are so thankful for the amazing job our DOT does. We've had a relatively easy winter by North Dakota standards, although it did get cold. I always say when winter comes late, it gets angry. So we did have some brutal cold, but for the overall, it's been really, really good. But the work never stops to build and maintain our more than 8,500 miles of roadway and nearly 4,900 bridges across the state. And as a rural state, we put on a lot of miles here in North Dakota. It's not like New York City or DC, where many people don't own a car and take taxis or Ubers if they need to go more than a few blocks. We have teenagers driving farm trucks, senior citizens driving hundreds of miles for doctor's appointments, and students driving 20 to 30 miles one way to go to school or basketball practice. We have over 1 million registered vehicles. That's over 200,000 more vehicles than people. And we have more than 500,000 licensed drivers. We have more miles of roadway per capita than any other state, and yet we have one of the smallest state DOTs in the nation. This makes the work you do critically important to help people get from point A to point B, whether those vehicles are hauling people, groceries, grain, cattle, oil, fertilizer, or one of hundreds of other products. So let's hear it for Ron Henke and our North Dakota DOT team. They really are doing a fantastic job. I'd also like to give a personal shout out to Denver Tolliver and the entire staff at the Upper Great Plains Transportation Institute for the research and education you provide and your work with our DOT on the local technical assistance program, now in its 44th year. By working together, you all have made North Dakota's highway system one of the best in the country. Back in 2015, when I was serving in the state Senate and we passed the surge bill, it was easier to get a handle on our transportation infrastructure needs because of the extensive work done by the Institute in their assessment of North Dakota North Dakota County and local roads needs. Side note, that was the first time I actually knew the Upper Great Plains Transportation Institute existed. But what a fantastic resource, and we have used them. I think we've used them in my office, both in DC and now here at home, every single day since. The Institute has continued to do this assessment every 2 years, producing a 20-year forecast of what's needed for our infrastructure investment, including our 5 tribal nations. This partnership with the Institute is key to our ability to do smart budgeting and strategic planning. So let's hear it for Denver and his team. Y'all are getting the applause lines right, so I must be doing it okay. In keeping with the theme of this year's conference, Building Our Horizons, I want to just briefly touch on what's on the horizon as we enter the second half of the legislative session. We have proposals that we believe will build upon the already solid transportation system to hold on to our status as one of the best states in the nation for infrastructure. The Armstrong proposal provides for an additional 1.5% POMV allocation to be used as follows. 0.75% allocated to Legacy Fund earnings, a highway distribution fund. This is estimated to provide an additional $80.2 million for the 27-29 biennium, which will grow in each subsequent biennium to support state and local infrastructure. This will provide DOT with a stable, more predictable funding system. This increases their ability to plan and use resources more efficiently. Now, there's some good news, bad news to this. The other 0.75 was supposed to go to bonding, which I have some friends in the legislature that aren't particularly happy about, which I understand. They're going to keep hearing about bonding from me for as long as I get to be governor. But the good news is that 0.75 for the POMV goes back, the extra 25% goes back into the highway distribution fund. So I might not get everything I want, but the people in this room might get a little more of what they want. So we'll just call it a win-win. The executive budget recommendation includes a new legacy fund bonding. See, here's the bonding package. And I don't expect that necessarily. I think it's a conversation we continue to have, because I think one of the problems we face whenever we're building multi-year transportation, and this is why I'm so passionate about it, is one of the unique natures of a 2-year budgeting process and a 2-year biennium for the legislature is we partially fund projects that we might not have the money to fund 2 years from now. And I would prefer that we prioritize projects however we do that and figure out that when we decide to do them, everybody in this room knows we're going to finish them. So we'll keep having that conversation with our legislatures, but however we do it, a more stable, more consistent funding system is essential to the DOT, but it's also essential to everybody else who works on this. Because we've been in a great run in North Dakota now for going on 20 years, but we are still a commodity-based economy. And what I don't want to see happen is to front-end load any kind of long-term infrastructure project and then not have, if you're paying $172 million out of a $600 million project, it doesn't do you a lot of good if you come back 2 years later and you don't have the money to finish it. So we'll continue working with our partners and each and every one of you in this room to make sure that we are appropriately projecting out how we can make sure that these dreams and these projects become a reality. Because as you all know, even with the Trump administration, even with everybody else, building linear infrastructure is taking longer and longer all the time. And we're hopeful with this administration, we will be able to cut back on some of those timelines. So, also included in the budget is $3 million for a new NDTC motor vehicle driver's license appointment system. Also, we're continuing the Flex Fund created last session, and we're asking for $82 million for the 25 to 27 biennium. This recognizes that our transportation system is all one system, interconnected by state, county, city, and township roads. Every taxpayer and motorist in North Dakota has an interest in ensuring road construction projects get done as quickly and as safely and as efficiently as possible. Our state is growing. We've had 162,000 people added in the last 20 years, and we know the transportation services and infrastructure that will need to meet demands are constantly being improved. Thousands of businesses, millions of motorists, and our most important industries all rely on transportation infrastructure and services, so we need to make sure they're efficient, in good condition, and as safe as possible. And we have to do all of that in some of the most adverse climate that anybody exists in the lower 48 states. It's not only good for business, it's also good for attracting and retraining workers. We need to support those businesses. Modern, efficient transportation is a key ingredient in making North Dakota the best state to live, work, and raise a family. And having conferences like this brings people together and provides a forum for our conversations about the best practices and the new ways of doing things. And I think I'll end on one thing and then I'll take some questions if anybody has any, but I'll need help because I can't really see very well. You don't have to stop linear infrastructure everywhere. You just have to stop it in one spot. And it doesn't matter if it's an oil pipeline, a transmission pipeline, a carbon pipeline, a bridge, a railroad, or an interstate. We have to get it. We don't build big things as well as we used to. And it's not because of anybody in this room. It's because of a permitting process and a litigation environment that allows for people who want to stop something to win even if they lose. And one of the things we're truly trying to bring into this conversation, both with state agencies, public, private partners, and the federal government, is the minute you get sued, you lose. Doesn't matter if the outcome is in your favor or not. And so we have to continue working with our federal partners to streamline the process, to use consistent language, and to allow for us to do those projects at home. After spending 6 years in DC and watching how this works, whether it's NEPA, whether it's railway, whether it's roads, whether it's anything, it becomes incredibly frustrating to recognize that the people who are trying to stop these projects don't actually necessarily care about the particular project. They're against progress, they're against moving things forward, and they're against doing that. And it's more frustrating to a guy who represents the place that is the geographic center of North America. North Dakota produces a ton of things we don't consume here. And we need roads and interstates and bridges and rail and all of the different mechanisms of transporting things to other places. Because what you really do in that regard is you give our farmers a better price on their corn. You give our small businesses a better chance to compete in an e-commerce market. You give our oil and natural gas producers a better price to compete with the Permian or the Powder River or the Eagle Ford Shale play. Transportation discount is the biggest hit on North Dakota products. So the more infrastructure we get in place, the more competition we put in the marketplace, the better off you are for every North Dakota industry that exists. And I think people forget that sometimes. A road isn't just a road. It's an access to a market. It's an access to compete in a global marketplace, and it allows a Red River Valley corn farmer or a Western North Dakota rancher or a coal plant in Beulah and Hazen to actually allow their products to get to market in the cheapest, safest, and most effective way possible. And that doesn't happen without everybody in this room. It doesn't happen without government working with each other. And it doesn't happen if we have an unruly, burdensome federal regulatory regime that, to be honest, has never made one roadway safer. They don't make it any safer than we do it here. There's a whole bunch of people working in DC that's job is not to make our lives harder. Unfortunately, the outcome is that they make our lives harder. We know how to build things. We know how to keep things safe. We know how to do things the North Dakota way. And the single biggest thing I can tell you from this perch compared to my last perch is, quite frankly, I'm going to be advocating for the same thing, which is stay out of our way and let us build things. And if we can accomplish that in any small way, it will have a meaningful impact to each and every one of you, but it mostly has an impact where it really becomes important is to the constituents you serve. And I don't care if it's in Castleton or Minot or Williston or Bismarck or Edgeley or Enderlin. We have to get our products to market. And the only way to get our products to market is through people like you coming to conferences like this, showing us how to do it better, safer, and more efficiently. And there's nobody that I've ever met in the federal government that actually does those things. They just make it take longer and cost more. So we have to work with our partners, and I'm excited about working with the National DOT, Interior, all of the different places to make sure that we allow North Dakotans to make North Dakota transportation decisions. But you all have been essential to the success in North Dakota for the last 20 years. You will be essential to North Dakota's success for the next century. We appreciate everything you do every day to help us, get our kids to school, get our kids to baseball practice, get our corn to market, and all of the different ways in which you improve the lives of North Dakotans every single day. And you are, with the exception of maybe water coming out of the faucet, you are probably the most taken for granted industry and group of industries in North Dakota. People expect to get on a road and be able to drive from Dickinson to Bismarck. They don't necessarily understand what it takes to make sure that that works, not just today, not tomorrow, but that it'll work 10 years from now, and that it'll work in a cohesive way that allows for growth and allows for all of the ways in which we can build North Dakota. We're lucky. We're a rectangle inside of a rectangle. We're rural but not desolate. But that strategic advantage only works is if the infrastructure package exists in a way that allows every community in North Dakota, from small towns in the center of the state to growing communities in the eastern and western part of the state, to allow themselves access to markets and allow people access to healthcare and education and living in the country and working in a city, and all of the things that make North Dakota such a special place to be. So for an industry that is oftentimes taken for granted, I just want to personally say thank you, and thanks for all your work in the transportation sector to keep our people moving, our supply chains running, and our economy rolling. I hope you enjoy the rest of your conference, and I will be happy to take it. I don't know what my time level was, so I don't know if I'm early or late, but if anybody has any questions, I'd love to answer them. Sweet. No, I really do. I mean, as somebody who's worked through this and frustrated through all of the transportations, challenges that we have faced and had, and how we've done such a great job of overcoming them, there's a lot of places that could learn a lot about how North Dakota has worked over the last 20 years. And that has a lot more to do with the people in this room than it does necessarily from having people who work in the building I work in every day. We want to be your partners. We want to build things, and we want to do it well and do it better, and make sure that we're doing it in a way that we continue to have this rapid growth and North Dakota's economy keeps working. Because I think at the end of the day, the real answer is we grow our economy, we keep our kids at home. We grow our economy, we keep our small towns from dying, and in fact, we get them growing. We grow our economy, and our farmers and ranchers get a fair price for their product. We grow our economy, and the world's hungrier for more calories. The world needs more energy. We have those things, but it doesn't do any good if they're stranded here. And you all help us get those things to market on a daily basis. And without you, we couldn't do what we do best, which is feed and fuel the world. So, sweet. I know this is social, so you can find me afterward to ask me questions too. Thank you all for having me, and I really, really appreciate the opportunity to say a few words with you here today.